All right, let's get on with this. We just spent 3 hours talking about why Selphie is best girl. Right, Final Fantasy IX.
S tier, S tier, S tier, easy S tier.
I knew this was coming. I knew it. When you made me put FF7 in a tier,
you got a problem, Joe?
I knew this
Final
was coming.
Fantasy IX is the best, most greatest FF that went back to the series' roots and is the truest FF there is.
While I appreciate FF9's look and aesthetic and think it's a very good game up there with the best of RPGs, I really can't put it above FF7.
Joe, you got to be trolling. FF9 is way better. FF7 is baby's first RPG for anime edgelords.
Come on, Donnie, don't be making that kind of argument in a Final Fantasy tier list. They're Japanese, and so they're all going to take inspiration from Japanese pop culture. You FF9 fanboys always talk shit about the other Final Fantasy games, bringing up all their flaws, but never see that FF9 has the same or even worse flaws.
FF7 is overrated.
It's not overrated. FF7 deserves its place as being the game to define a new era of video game history. It was the game to bring cinematic quality to the RPG genre and launch video game storytelling to new heights with the use of beautiful pre-rendered backgrounds and FMVs, dramatic camera staging, and character blocking. It was a gigantic leap from the 2D overhead sprites of the last game. Everything good about FF9 is owed to the innovations that FF7 pioneered.
FF7 got away from what made FF. They're fantasy games, Joe, and they should stay that way because that's what makes them good.
It's totally superficial. While FF7 is more sci-fi, it is very much an FF game in design and spirit. It has it all, rebels fighting against an evil world-spanning empire that corrupts nature to create an army of magic super soldiers. Magic stones that represent the natural power of the planet imbue our heroes with the power to fight back. A megalomaniac villain who believes in his own godhood and wants to stop the cycle of nature to achieve immortality. These are all quintessentially aspects of Final Fantasy and its adherence to classic heroic storytelling.
That's all well and good, but FF9 does it better. It has the fantasy tropes, wizards, knights, princesses, and a fun adventure in a very cozy world that I'd love to live in.
I agree that it is cozy, but that doesn't make it a better game with a better story. FF7 is so much more in its design and execution. FF7 has some of the best locations in an RPG ever. The Great Glacier, Cosmo Canyon, Wutai, Nibelheim, the Forgotten City, Gold Saucer, and of course Midgar. It has themes and metaphors in its world and locations that are relevant to our own world even to this day. Terrorism, environmental issues, post-industrial disaffection. I mean, come on, Donald, the people of Coral are your voter base. What themes does FF9 have?
Well, Joe, for starters, it has a very great world. It has important themes, very important themes, like war being bad, like very bad. Honestly, did you see what the Black Mages did to Burmecia?
Yes, I have played the game.
Sad. It also shows the corrupting nature of power for power's sake. Queen Brana Raza Alexandros XVI was a kind woman who was taken advantage of after her husband's death.
She dies halfway through the game. That story arc is over very quickly.
Shut up, Joe. I'm not finished. It also tells us the importance of life and that memories are what makes a person not just in their lifetime, but long after they're gone.
That's the exact same theme of FF7, but FF7 did it way better. What do you think the live stream is?
This message is told perfectly in the character of VII, who is a good boy and must be protected at all costs. His life and the challenges he faces are ones we can all empathize with. The meaning of life, why are we here, who made us, and the existential fear of death.
I agree that Vivi is best character. Ironically, he feels more like a sci-fi character than any other character in FF, having more in common with the artificial human trope that is common in sci-fi. That said, his story is also cut short with no real resolution or confrontation. Vivi never gets to have his moment in the spotlight, confront his enemy, and pretty much disappears from the main plot after Disc 2, which is a common issue I have with the main cast and story of 9.
How could you say that, Joe? Everyone loves the cast of FF9. Zidane is a great character who is selfless and does what's right. He's much better than the wimpy emo boys, Cloud and Squall.
They're not wimpy emo boys. They suffer from serious traumatic personality disorders, but are heroic and brave. Zidane is a fuckboy who just chases pussy and gropes women. But then you probably like that.
Hey, Garnet's ass is huge. How can anyone not accidentally grab her by it?
My issue with 9 and its story and characters really stems from the fact it was originally a spin-off game that was obviously meant to be a lot shorter. But when they made it into a mainline numbered FF, they had to pad out the game a lot to justify making it a 4-disc
Come
game.
on, Joe, that's baloney.
It isn't, Donald. It suffers from bad pacing, and its main cast of characters are heavily underutilized. which is ironic as these are usually the flaws that are leveled at other FFs by FF9 fanboys.
That's right. I mean that huge materia fetch quest.
Those had great set-piece moments like the train chase and the rocket launch.
Fort Condor sucks.
What other RPG has a whole RTS minigame in it? FF7 was made at a time where the concept of games within games was very popular. With the hugely expanded memory of CD-ROMs, the idea of having several games in one was very appealing. Fort Condor does suck, though, but you can lose it and just fight a mid-boss. It's not a big deal.
Big deal to me, minigame bad.
If you hate bad minigames, then why do you like FF9? Those games are terrible. Chocobo Hot and Cold is incredibly tedious, and Tetra Master is the worst card game
Skill
ever
issue,
invented.
I always get good damage rolls. I don't know what the problem is.
FF7's minigames are clever ways to break up the gameplay and are relevant to the action going on in the story.
I couldn't tell what the fuck I was doing in that submarine game, but I like the red sub better anyway.
Anyway, my issue with the story of 9 and its characters are that it's very underbaked and not much happens in the game and it rushes the ending. Much of the first disc, nothing happens until Burmecia is invaded. A lot of the events are contrived by Garnet making bad decisions like returning to Alexandria, making the whole first part of the game kind of pointless. Disc 2 is the best part, so not much complaints there, but there the plot comes to a grinding halt in Disc 3 where you stand around doing nothing while characters figure out why they're still hanging around each other. This is the point where our cast of characters really drops off for me. Like I get the impression that originally, when it was a spin-off, the game was designed to be more like a revolving cast of guest characters like FF4. But they changed it late into development. Characters like Freya are totally wasted and do nothing. This would explain why they're not in the FMVs, like the one at the Shimmering Island. Anyway, after a bunch of anime cutscenes involving a dumb love letter, you go off to play a godforsaken Tetra Master tournament.
Skill issue, I always get the rebirth ring with my top-tier goblin deck.
Then you're stuck in more cutscenes until finally you go on a bunch of fetch quest dungeons with no real plot advancement. Then suddenly you're on Terra. I wish we could have seen more of Terra and even have its own small overworld, but instead we get one town and dungeon and a massive exposition dump from Garland.
Garland is a great character. He's looking out for the people of his planet and is going to make Terra great again.
Garland is an interesting character.
Robot man good.
Too bad he's underused in place of a terrible villain like Kuja.
What's wrong with Kuja?
He's an anime edgelord villain whose whole character is that he wants to impress Daddy because Daddy doesn't love him.
Kuja's much better than that.
And then when he finds out he's going to die, he rage quits and tries to destroy the universe.
Understandable.
The confrontation with Garland just happens, and then Kuja pulls a Deus Ex Machina and goes trance, which is never really developed in the story. Trance is just a combat mechanic. Then suddenly it's the most important plot point to explain what Kuja was planning all along.
FF7 has Deus Ex Materia. The plot is solved with Materia.
Come on, man, that's not true. The plot points with white and black Materia are major story beats that are hinted at from the start. And our heroes have defeat Sephiroth themselves with no help from Deus Ex Materia. Anyway, Trance is a terrible limit break system. I know they were afraid of it being abusable, so it pops immediately, but come on, man.
Yes, it's terrible. I have to admit I haven't even seen some of them. Like, what does Queenas even do?
Lets you use Eat on enemies at 50% HP instead of 25%.
Holy shit, this is trash.
Yeah. Anyway, you are then suddenly thrust into the endgame where Kuja has somehow opened a portal to a time crash where you travel through the memories of the universe so that you can go back to the beginning of time itself and visit the crystal that all memories come and go from that Kuja plans to destroy. Now, how the fuck did Kuja do that?
Well, Joe, Kuja is a smart guy, you know. I wouldn't like FF9 if it didn't have the smartest guys in it that remind me of myself. I'm a very smart guy, Joe, who understands all about time anomalies and traveling back to the birth of the universe.
Okay, then, after defeating Kuja, you're fighting Pepsi Man?
That's right. FF9 is a Coca-Cola game, which is the preferred drink for all true Americans, so it's fitting that you would fight Pepsi Man at the end.
I get what they were going for, having the final boss be the embodiment of the fear of death and a harbinger of non-existence where life and death and the memories associated with them would no longer exist. But it's really poorly done with it suddenly happening in the space of one boss fight. I know it's a homage to the Cloud of Darkness from FF3, but at least in that game, they had some build-up.
Joe, stop talking about those old games. I haven't even played them.
But you like FF9 because it's so like old Final Fantasy?
Yeah, but those games are boring and look bad. FF9 is a good-looking game and is better.
Right. So after defeating Pepsi Man, you are teleported out and have one of the most boring endings of any FF. You stand around in front of the airship for ages, just talking. Zidane then goes back to Kuja and forgives him for destroying every major city in the Mist Continent, genociding the Burmesians and people of Clara, genociding his and Zidane's own people of Terra, and trying to kill the whole universe.
Such a tragic character.
Then it ends on the play from the beginning, with Zidane making a dramatic appearance for some reason, even though no person in the world would think he's dead. And it just ends.
You can play blackjack at the end screen. Just press R2, L1, R2, R2, up, cross, right circle, down, triangle, L2, R1, R2, L1, square, square, start.
Thanks, Donald. I'll try that on my next playthrough. So just to restate, I think FF9 is a very good game, but I'm not putting it above FF7. There are flaws that we can't ignore. The ATE system is terrible, trance is terrible, the world outside of the mist and outer continents are empty. The dungeons are a step back in design, with a lot of them being padding and not plot relevant, and just there to be references to old F dungeons. It has some annoying characters like Kina and Aiko, and the plot is poorly paced. Characters like Freya are forgotten about, which is ironic as that's what Sir Fratley does, and has a rushed ending.
Okay, Joe, I can't take any more. Just put it behind FF7 and let's get on. Just one thing, if you could smash one character, who would you choose? Tifa or Garnet?
Garnet.
Based